Hi, friend. I'm Melissa, and welcome back to Midlife with Melissa. Wherever you're listening today, I am so glad you're here. So grab your favorite drink, get comfortable, and let's spend a little time together. Last time, I shared my experience beginning hormone replacement therapy and some of the questions that finally helped me stop blaming myself for everything that I was feeling. Today, I want to spend time on two of the symptoms that frightened me the most before I had any idea what could be happening: brain fog and anxiety. When I say brain fog, I don't mean walking into a room and forgetting why I went in there. That happened to me before perimenopause, just like it happens to everybody. What frightened me was forgetting so many ordinary things in the same day that I began wondering whether I could still depend on my own mind. The anxiety was confusing in a different way. I could wake up afraid before the day had even given me anything to be afraid of. Everything around me might be fine, yet my body reacted like a warning had already gone off. Those two symptoms together made me ask questions I was scared to say out loud. Am I losing it? Could something be wrong with my brain? Why can't I pull myself together? I want to tell you what those days actually looked like for me. I also want to talk about what happened to my confidence when I kept treating symptoms as proof that something was wrong with me as a person. If your mind has felt unfamiliar lately, you may recognize some of what I am about to describe. The brain fog can sound mild. Before I experienced it this way, I probably would have pictured someone forgetting her keys or losing her train of thought every once in a while. What happened to me went far beyond an occasional forgetful moment. There were days when it seemed like one forgotten thing ran straight into the next one. I could take the milk out of the refrigerator and later discover that I had put it away in the cabinet. I could put the butter in the microwave instead of in the refrigerator. I forgot dates I should have known, phone numbers I had used over and over, and even debit card pins that I had entered countless times. When that happened, I knew the information was in my head. I could almost feel myself reaching for it. I would sit there thinking, come on, Melissa, you know this. Still, nothing came. That feeling is hard to explain to someone who has never experienced it. The information did not feel gone. It felt blocked, as if there was a door between me and something I had always been able to reach. A forgotten number may sound small until it is one more item in a full day of things your brain will not hand back to you. Conversations became frustrating too. I could be right in the middle of a sentence and lose the whole direction of what I was saying. Sometimes the thought disappeared. Other times, one ordinary word would refuse to come. I knew what I meant. I could picture what I wanted to say. I simply could not get the word from my brain to my mouth. Then I would become so focused on finding that one word that the rest of the conversation stopped moving. I was no longer listening or talking naturally. My mind had gone into a search that became more frustrating by the second. There were times when I gave up and stopped talking. That was normal for me. I had the thought, I knew what I wanted to contribute, and then I would reach the point where trying to say it felt more frustrating than staying quiet. The conversation would move on while I was still stuck on the word I could not find. Afterward, I replayed it in my head and wondered whether the other person had noticed or I thought I sounded confused. A missing word that lasted only seconds for everyone else could stay with me much longer because it added to everything else I had forgotten that day. Once you can laugh, every once in a while you call it a brain fart and move on. I had used that expression myself for years. An entire day of it does not feel funny. When the milk is in the cabinet and the butter is in the microwave, a familiar pen is missing, and your sentence disappears while you are speaking, you begin looking at the whole picture differently. The thought of dementia crossed my mind, even though I thought I seemed far too young for that. Could something serious be happening to my brain like that? I questioned my sanity because I could not explain why familiar parts of my life were suddenly so difficult to access. Those fears were real. The same strange things kept happening, and I had no explanation. Dementia sounded impossible at my age, yet I was frightened enough to search for any reason my brain might be behaving this way. Your mind is involved in almost everything you do, yet most of us never stop to think about how much we rely on it. Remembering where things belong usually happens without thought. The same is true to following a conversation, finding a familiar word, recognizing a date, or entering a number we have used for years. When those everyday abilities become unreliable, even simple tasks can make you uneasy. For a long time, the problem seemed to be getting worse. I had no explanation for it. I only knew I did not feel mentally sharp, and I was embarrassed by how often it showed. I tried harder. I concentrated harder. I silently scolded myself, hoping frustration would somehow force my brain to cooperate. It never worked. Learning more about perimenopause finally gave me something useful to discuss with a healthcare professional. I had specific examples instead of one vague sentence about not feeling like myself. Instead of giving one vague description, I had real examples. Food turning up in strange places, familiar information disappearing, and words getting lost often enough to interfere with conversations. Those details gave us something real to talk about. Since beginning hormone replacement therapy, I have personally noticed improvement in the brain fog. It has not vanished, and I still lose a word or a thought sometimes. The difference is noticeable. My mind feels easier to reach. I can get through more of the day without basic information seeming to sit just outside of my grasp. That improvement has encouraged me. It has also helped me to stop insulting myself whenever I forget something. I can notice what happened, write something down if I need to, and continue with my day. I do not automatically use one missing word as evidence that I have become unintelligent or incapable. Brain fog affected the way my mind was working. It never erased everything I knew, and it never changed the value of the woman living through it. I wish I had separated those feelings much sooner. Anxiety made me question myself in another way. I had experienced anxiety before. I knew what it felt like to worry about family, money, work, a relationship, an appointment, or something coming up the next day. Usually, I could name the worry. I could point to a problem and say, that is what has me upset. This anxiety often arrived without a story attached to it. Some mornings I woke up uneasy before I had even gotten out of bed. Nothing had happened. No one had called with bad news. There was no emergency waiting for me. Even so, I had an overwhelming feeling that something was wrong. My mind immediately went looking for a reason. Did I forget something? Is something about to happen? Why do I feel afraid when I cannot name a single thing I am afraid of? The search for an explanation made the anxiety worse. I was feeling it, watching it, questioning it, and waiting to see what it meant. Soon, I was anxious about being anxious. There is a particular exhaustion in trying to solve a feeling that has no clear source. If I had been worried about an appointment, I could prepare for it. If there had been a family problem, I could make a call. This feeling gave me no task to complete and no moment when I could say the problem had been handled. It could follow me from one part of the day into the next. I might distract myself for a little while, then notice the uneasiness again and begin searching for the cause all over. The lack of an answer made me feel even less in control. I paid attention to every thought and every change in my emotions. Reactions I once would have let pass became something I examined. Leaving the house or going somewhere unfamiliar could feel overwhelming, and even a place I knew was safe sometimes set off that dread. I could tell myself, Melissa, you are okay. My body did not always respond to the facts. It could keep my heart and nerves on alert while the logical part of me knew I was safe. Trying to explain that disconnect was difficult. How do you tell someone there is no clear danger while every signal inside you says there is? I thought I should be able to control it. I told myself to calm down and quit overthinking, as though I could order my body to pull itself together. Those commands only added another problem. I was already frightened, and now I was embarrassed that I could not talk myself out of even being frightened. Anxiety picked up shame along the way. I wondered why leaving home, making a plan, or dealing with an ordinary situation could suddenly take so much out of me. Then the brain fog joined it. I was forgetting things throughout the day while my body had behaved as though something terrible might happen at any minute. That combination can make a woman look at herself and ask, what is happening to me? Learning that hormonal changes could be relevant gave me a reasonable place to start a medical conversation. It did not mean that every emotion was hormonal, and it did not rule out other possible causes. Brain fog and anxiety can come from many things. A qualified healthcare professional needs the full picture, especially when symptoms are new, intense, or interfering with everyday life. In my case, perimenopause belonged in that conversation. Knowing that allowed me to ask what might be contributing to the anxiety instead of me spending all my energy criticizing my reaction to it. Professional support mattered. I was no longer trying to solve the whole thing alone with self-control and late night worry. Since beginning HRT, that constant on-edge feeling has eased for me. My mind feels steadier, and my body is not sounding an alarm through every hour of the day. I am still early in treatment, and this is my personal experience. Another woman's experience may look completely different. The relief has shown me how much energy I had been spending just trying to manage the way I felt. One of the first things I noticed was almost ordinary. I was sitting there. Nothing terrible was happening. And my body finally seemed to agree with me. There was no danger to explain and no alarm to quiet. I was simply okay for a while. After so many days of unexplained dread, that kind of ordinary calm meant more to me than I can fully describe. The brain fog was frustrating and the anxiety was frightening. Together, they began affecting the way I saw myself. I had always thought of myself as someone who could handle things, remembering what needed to be done, making decisions, and carrying a conversation had once felt automatic. I never worried that my thoughts might disappear halfway through a sentence. I trusted my mind. After enough forgotten details and anxious mornings, that trust weakened. Every forgotten detail became a reason to question myself. If anxiety made a simple plan feel too big, I picked apart my reaction and wondered why something so ordinary had become difficult. Eventually, the symptoms followed me into the way I judged my abilities. Hesitation crept into things I used to do without thinking. I double checked myself more often, and sometimes I avoided a conversation because losing a word in front of someone had become embarrassing. Making plans became harder too. I did not know whether I would wake up feeling steady or spend the day fighting dread and trying to remember what I had just been doing. Staying in my small, familiar world sometimes felt easier than risking another moment when I might appear overwhelmed or unlike myself. Avoiding something brought short term relief. I did not have to worry about losing my train of thought or becoming anxious away from home. Later, though, I had one more experience I had to back away from, and that gave me even more reason to doubt whether I could manage the next one. That is how the symptoms reached beyond the moments when they were happening. They began influencing decisions before I had even tried. I was planning around the possibility of feeling confused, embarrassed, or frightened. That choice cost me confidence. The more I pulled away from life, the less certain I felt about stepping back into it. Back then, I did not say, "Today is a difficult brain fog day." My thoughts sounded more like this: "I can't remember anything anymore." I did not describe the anxiety as a symptom that felt unusually intense that day. I asked why I could no longer handle anything. Listen to how different those sentences are. One tells the truth about what happened today, and the other takes today's struggle and uses it to describe the whole woman. I did that repeatedly. A difficult symptom became evidence that I was weaker, less dependable, less capable, and farther away from the person I remembered being. Here is what I wish someone had said to me plainly. A symptom is not a character trait. A missing pen says nothing about a woman's intelligence. Anxiety can feel frightening without erasing her courage. And asking for support cannot cancel all the years she managed her life well. It means something deserves attention. That idea changed the way I responded to myself. Instead of demanding an explanation for what was wrong with Melissa, I began looking at the immediate need in front of me. Sometimes the immediate answer was as practical as writing down an appointment, setting a phone reminder, or finishing one task before beginning another. Rest helped on some days. On others, the right response was contacting my provider and asking a question. Using a reminder did not lower the expectations I had for my life. It allowed me to function while I figured out what was happening. I did not have to remember everything perfectly before I was allowed to feel capable again. My confidence began returning when I stopped turning each mistake into a forecast for the rest of my life. I still had brain fog. Anxiety still visited. Those facts were real, and so was the rest of me. Different tools did not make me less myself, and professional help did not take away from my strength. I could admit that something had changed without declaring that I had disappeared. If you have been forgetting things that once came easily, losing words, or wondering why ordinary life suddenly feels so hard, pay attention to those changes. Put what you notice in writing and take clear examples to a qualified healthcare professional so other causes can be considered too. While you are looking for answers, try not to make yourself the enemy. There is a difference between having a problem that needs support and believing you are the problem. I spent too much time confusing the two. If I could sit across from the Melissa who was putting groceries in the wrong places and waking up afraid, I would tell her to stop measuring every day against the woman she had been years earlier. That comparison was crueler than I realized. Each time I forgot something, I compared myself with the version of me who would have remembered. When a word disappeared, I compared myself with the woman who could speak without thinking about it. When anxiety made an outing difficult, I pictured the woman who would have walked out the door without giving it a second thought. I always came away feeling as though I had failed the comparison. What I needed was information. Criticism had already had plenty of time and had not helped me once. Changes in thinking, concentration, sleep, and emotions were worth mentioning before they became completely overwhelming. I could arrive at a medical appointment without solving them first or preparing a diagnosis on my own. Asking for professional help meant I was taking the changes seriously. I also needed the words to explain what I was living through. Before I learned more about perimenopause, every symptom seemed to stand alone. I kept brain fog in one box, anxiety in another, then treated exhaustion and emotional changes as unrelated problems too. I kept trying to deal with each box by itself. No one had ever taught me to step back and ask whether several changes might belong in the same conversation. Specific notes helped me to do that. I could tell a provider when something began, how often it happened, and how much it interfered with my day. That was much more useful than sitting alone and blaming myself for all of it. I want to be careful with this part. Brain fog and anxiety should never automatically be labeled perimenopause. Both can have other causes, and new or worsening symptoms deserve qualified medical attention. For me, professional guidance opened the next door. I could ask better questions and feel less powerless while we considered my health history and options. Since starting HRT, I have seen improvement in both symptoms. I still forget things and I still experience anxiety. I am not claiming that treatment turned me into someone who remembers every detail and never worries. My mind simply feels more available to me, and the constant edge has eased, and those changes have been encouraging. I also know that my treatment experience belongs to me. Another woman may need another approach. Her medical history, risks, preferences, and options may be entirely different. The important change in my life was that I stopped treating every symptom as a personal defect and began discussing it as part of my health. I wish women learned about these possibilities earlier. We should not have to reach the point where brain fog, anxiety, sleep problems, and emotional changes have taken over before somebody mentions perimenopause. These conversations should happen in our 30s and continue with our daughters, sisters, and friends. I think about my daughters when I say that. More than anything, I want them to recognize these changes earlier than I did and know that a woman can be functioning, responsible, and still feel frightened by what is happening inside her mind. Giving them the information before they need it could keep them from spending years attaching ugly names to themselves while their bodies are asking for attention. The purpose would never be to frighten younger women about getting older. Preparation can spare a woman from years of wondering whether she is failing at life. If her mind suddenly feels different one day, or anxiety appears in a form she does not recognize, she will at least know that the change is worth discussing. The word perimenopause will be available as one possibility, and she can bring the full picture to a healthcare professional instead of deciding that she is overreacting. Awareness leaves room for other causes. It simply gives a woman more language for describing what she notices. That is what I was missing: useful information, honest words, and far less shame. Had I known sooner that these changes deserved attention, I believe I would have treated myself with more patience. The Melissa who needed this information years ago will never receive it on time. I can say it here, though, in case another woman is listening while secretly asking the same frightening questions. Something feels different is a complete reason to begin a conversation. You do not have to declare yourself the problem before anyone will take you seriously. If your mind has felt unfamiliar lately, please don't wait for daily life to become unmanageable before asking for help. The explanation may come out awkwardly, and half the examples might disappear from your mind once you are sitting in the appointment. Write them down beforehand and take the notes with you. Tell the truth about how often it happens and what it is changing in your life. Let a qualified healthcare professional help you look at the full picture. During that process, remember that the symptom and the woman experiencing it are two separate things. Brain fog affected my memory without changing my intelligence. Anxiety frightened me, yet my strength was still there. Getting support was one of the capable choices I made. I was dealing with changes I had not been prepared to recognize, and I needed help making sense of them. Perimenopause may be part of your answer, or the cause could be something entirely different. Either way, you are allowed to ask for a careful conversation about what has changed. So if you have been sitting quietly with fear that you are falling apart, begin with the facts you can see. Maybe the milk went into the cabinet. A familiar number would not come. Your sentence disappeared halfway through, or the dread was waiting before the day began. Those are real experiences. Write them down and say them out loud to someone qualified to help you investigate them. The explanation doesn't need to sound beautiful. It only needs to be honest. That honest explanation was where I finally found a place to begin. Until next time, be gentle with yourself. Keep asking questions. Keep choosing curiosity over criticism. And remember, I've been saving you a seat.